Hi, this is Tessa Keogh, and I thought we'd talk a little bit about relationships today. And basically, this is all about how things relate to you. And there are a couple of terrific tools in Legacy that help you figure out relationships. Not how to work out the problems you have, of course, but just simply to see how you're related to people. So let's take a look at those today. Now, the first thing you'll notice in my family view is that I've set relationships. So it will show up what a person's relationship is based on who we decide is going to be the self or the central person. And the way that you find that or play around with it is in Tools. So let's go there. You click on Tools, you click on Set Relationships, and what's going to happen is the person that you've highlighted is going to be listed here. And if you want to change that, what you do is you click on this button. And when you do that, you can type the RIN in for the person you have in mind. Select them, and then click on Set Relationships. Now, I always want to show the closest direct line relationship, if any, but you can show the closest relationship. I use the highest numbers here, the maximum, so that I get as many direct and indirect relationships as possible. Now keep in mind that you can always cancel it. You can look for help, and that will open up the index to talk about relationships, and you can clear any of the relationships that you want. So let's go ahead and set relationships. And when you do that, Legacy goes through the program and looks at how everyone's related. And the person that I set was Ernest William Lidman, and so if he is the self, then Alof Pearson is the second great grandfather. And it will show you if you click through the direct line, this is the great grandfather. You could take a look at a grand uncle, and what you'll see here is a little plus. And if you see that, you'll realize that in Legacy that shows that this person is related in more than one way, and so there are going to be some interrelationships going on here. And this is the kind of thing that you want to look for, certainly if you have small family groups that were in the same general area and intermarried. But you're going to have grand uncles, you're also going to have first cousin once removed, and this is kind of when you get into the more interesting ones. You know, you'll have second cousins, third cousins, etc. And that's going to take us to another part of Legacy, because it's interesting to find out what the relationship is, but if you don't know what that relationship means, you might need a little help in explaining it. So in addition to setting the relationships so that they show up in your family view or your pedigree view, you can also do a couple of other things. So if we go back up to Tools, there's also another one called Relationship Calculator. And if you do that, it takes the individual that you have listed and puts that person in one window here. And then it takes the self person, and you can always change that by selecting a different person on your left or a different person on your right, and it shows you how that relationship is determined. First of all, it tells you that they're second cousins, and then it tells you the common ancestors that they have. And in this instance, they have two common ancestors. So they have there's a second cousin and a third cousin once removed. And then in this section here, it shows you how they descend from the common ancestors. And those are the people up here. So we have Alof Larsen, Lars Alofsen, and then Ernest Lidman. And on this side we have Halvard Larsen, Victor Larsen, and Jeanette Larsen. And so you can see how these two people are related. You could put yourself in with anyone else in your program to determine how you're related to them as well. Now there's a number of things you can do. You can calculate relationships, and it shows you the figures that you'll want to use here. And then you can also determine what kind of wording you want, whether you use grand uncle or great uncle, and that's just listed here, and then there's additional options. So that's the relationship calculator, and that is also found in the tools section. So just to show you again, we have the relationship calculator and we have set relationships, both in this. Now if you go to the reports item on the toolbar and go into all reports, you can also go into the forms center. And when you do this, you can click on relationship diagrams. This will give you the diagram for the relationships in a number of languages. So let's take a look at English. And you can just preview that. And then what you'll notice is you have the source, which would be the self, and there's a father and a mother, brother and sisters, and then items we're familiar with, a grandfather and a grandmother, aunts and uncles, first cousins. And this will show you how the relationships are determined based on common ancestors. So you could take a look at what are third cousins, second cousins, first cousins, and then of course once removed. So you're reading here, first cousin once removed. Now you can see this list in a number of different languages. This is Norwegian, and this is kind of a helpful chart to have, because if you're looking at Norwegian records or you were looking at French records or Italian records, it would be a good record to have so that you know what words you're looking for that agree with father, mother, grandfather, grandmother, aunt and uncle, cousins. So if you haven't taken a look at the relationship diagrams and you have any of these languages in your family tree, you might want to take a look at that. Now I noticed right away that one of the ones that's missing is Swedish, and there's, I'm sure, a number of other ones. So I would have a suggestion that if you have this type of diagram that you've put together for your own families, you might want to share it so that Legacy could upload additional relationship diagrams. Now, while we're still in the reports section, another one you're going to want to take a look at is relationships. And if you click on that, and we'll make this a bit bigger here, if you take a look at this in relationships, your starting person in this instance is Ernest Lidman, and I can ask it to include all individuals in relationships or include only individuals in relationships with a tag. And then I ask for a surname and I can get additional information, perhaps the RIN and the birth and death years. And if I've asked for all individuals, we can just click on this and get a preview of the report. And keep in mind, you can always determine your page setup, your fonts, and how you want the report to be printed, either to your screen, to a PDF file, or to a comma-separated value. So let's take a quick look at the preview. Now the first thing I'm going to want to do is increase the size, but this is going to give you the relationships to the person that you selected, and it's going to be done in alphabetical order. Now I've included the RIN and I've also included the birth and death years. What you'll notice is in a number of them, all of that information isn't filled in, but it does give you all of the people in your family tree, but it lists first cousins 4 times removed, fourth cousins, any variety of items. Everyone who appears in that list will be included in your relationship report. So after you've taken a look at this and you've determined how you want it to print out, then you could create your PDF. It's as simple as that. Now there's one other item that I want to show you in our relationship discussion today, and that is if we were to go back to Tools and click on Relationship Calculator again, you could check out your options, which in this instance is to show the RINs, and then you could click on Print. And when you do this, you can include record identification numbers, include marriage record identification numbers, include the birth and death year, whether that's in short form or full dates, include the marriage date. If you have pictures, you could include those. You can put a box around it and you can make a decision whether you want to shadow it or not. And in this instance, you can choose the box you want. Let's just take a look at this one and click OK. And you can determine the size. Now the size is in here as a default, but you could always change it. So if you wanted to choose your text color, you could come in here, choose that. You could choose your box color, and we're just playing with something right now. You can change your fonts, and right now you can see there's a number of different ones, including the ones I've changed, which are Comic Sans, but some of the information is in there on its own. But you can go through and change anything you want and change your page setup. And in here, if you started out with this, you could do landscape or portrait, and you can determine what size that you have. So if we were going to put this on a legal size, and ask it to print the current relationship, and then we can preview it. Now what you're going to get, and I'm going to make it smaller just to look at this. Guess we're going to have to come in between. But you have a common ancestor, and it tells you that Olaf Persson is the second great-grandfather of Ernest William Littman. And you can see that I've shadowed these boxes, and I've listed the couples. So it gives you the information to carry it down to the individual. And these charts are the kind of thing that you have seen to one degree or another in the various genealogy shows that have been on television, when they're trying to explain to a person how they might be related to someone else, or how that line carries up. For instance, who do you think you are, or genealogy roadship. But this is the kind of thing that if you're visual at all, or if you want to include information for those people in your family who might not be interested in reading the story but want to see how the family carries back, go ahead and play with this type of charting. And finally, one other thing that you could do if you want to take a visual approach to this is open your charting program in Legacy. And when you do that, immediately the chart creation wizard opens up and asks you which type of chart that you want to create. Now I have the person selected from my program, which is Olaf Persson. He's also listed right here, and you can always change that person, go to the father, the mother, look at the marriages. But if you click on chart type, you can choose your chart. We're going to select the standard, and I have mine set up with a landscape version and a tree behind it, and I've also done some colors with it. They correspond to the 4 colors that Mary Hill has talked about. But in any event, you can always zoom in if you want to see more. But what I've done in this instance, and we can just move this around, is I have the person's name, and their surname is in all caps, and the information I have for the person is birth, christening, death, and burial. And then I've carried this through to the various people, and this is a really good idea because you can move around with generations. You can have as many as you want in here. You can also change your chart type. So if we were to do that and we were to look at hourglass, it immediately changes it. And as you can see, this is one that I haven't used very often. So I haven't set up a background for it, but if you were to put your information in here, the one thing you'd want to do is play around to get it to read the way that you're interested in. But you could select the number of ancestors and the descendants. And this is another good way to take a look at your relationship. So these are a number of things that you can do, whether you save it or not, when you're working in your Legacy program to play with relationships. There's one other thing that I want to point out to you. And what I'd like to remind everyone is to take advantage not only of their legacy program, but also of your search engine, whatever that is. Right now we are in Google Chrome, and I'm just going to click through really quickly and show you a few things. So if you ask for a relationship chart and include genealogy and Swedish terms, you get a number of hits back. And the first thing that I came to was a discussion of the basics and then referring to both English and Swedish. I also took a look, and this is one of the places I always head to first, Wikipedia. It brings up cousin, and then you can take a look at all types of relationships. You can go through here. You can also ask for other family relationships, but these charts are really good ways of taking a look and seeing if you understand what any of these terms mean. The next one is genline.com, which is Swedish genealogy online, and they have a very good dictionary with abbreviations, and if you have the Swedish word, you can use that, and then there's some other ways of approaching it, but they make it very easy to click through the alphabet here. The next one I put in is just changing the word, looking for Norwegian terms. And the first thing that I got was the Norwegian English Dictionary in Roots Web. And this is just another example that you should just be looking around at all kinds of sources, whether that's Cindy's List or Roots Web or Family Search, or in my instance just Googling it and using Wikipedia. You're going to get a lot of this type of information, and you'll be able to look at the different words. There's also a Norwegian American Dictionary, and you can take a look at the preliminary list of Norwegian words for family relations. I played with this search, Norwegian terms for family members, and it brought up Family Search. You could sign into this and you could save those pages if you wanted to, but this is a great one to look at, and the reason that I really like looking it up online is because with a control find, the control F key, you could look at the word, if you spell it right, mother, and it's going to bring up 10 instances right here where mother appears. Grandmother, and you just click through the list. Godmother, mother, maternal grandmother, and so you're going to be able to find all of those words that you're interested in and work on it again with father, cousin, what have you. Control F is a really good way to find your way, especially on a long page. You can see where this shows up. You could click to any of those areas that you wanted to look at. And you can also take a look at the PDF version with FamilySearch.org. Because they have the list there. Now, this you could probably, let's see if this works as well. All right, you'll also be able to find it in a PDF. So that's just a helpful thing to know, but these are ones that you could take a look at because these types of terms are going to show up in any of your documents, in this instance, Norwegian or Swedish or what have you. I looked for Swedish word list for Family Search, and it brought up the same thing with Swedish. So pick whatever language it is that you're working with and take advantage of all the work that Family Search has done to help you find information about relationships. And I have no doubt that there is also something in the wiki about relationships. So I've just given you a number of ways of going about it with two languages that I'm most familiar with. And you'll notice that because we have people from Sweden and we also have people from Norway. So I hope this has been helpful to give you some sense of getting around in legacy, finding out more about the relationships, seeing how you're related to people in your family tree. Just remember, you want to be looking in Tools, Relationship Calculator, Set Relationships, and you want to be looking in Reports, All Reports. Take a look at your Form Center and your relationships. If you have any other suggestions or comments, please list them here in our comments section, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.